Dallas Cowboys All-Pro cornerback Trevon Diggs returned to practice on Wednesday, and of course, he made a big play. We'll tell you how he played in that scrimmage in this episode of the Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As the playoffs wind down, the sports stop sporting the way we'd like them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right, there's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. And joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. You can follow him on Twitter at McCoolBCB. On today's show, we are breaking down the Cowboys' final scrimmage with the Los Angeles Rams. It was another joint practice. They decided to attack this one on the end. I bet there's a coach from the Rams that's wishing that wouldn't have happened. If you missed it, there was a little bit of a scuffle or I think it was an offensive coach for the Rams got shoved down. Anyways, we're going to tell you about the biggest storylines from that practice. Atlanta, let's start with Trevon Diggs, who returned to practice and, of course, got an interception. How did you think he looked?
Yeah, I mean, from the clips we saw, it looks like he was moving around well. He looks like he's in good shape everywhere else, right? He's nice and filled out. He certainly has a vet body at this point now. And I think, from the way he was moving, he had an interception, obviously a huge leaping interception, which was great to see. I mean, honestly, it's just great to see him out on the field at this point, and moving around and doing football motions with pads on and playing in padded contact stuff. So yeah, that was all extremely positive. And, obviously he looks to be up to his old ways so far.
We really haven't had two corners like this at the same time on the field together and healthy, right? Because Trevon, when he had the awesome 2021 season, the other outside corner you had, obviously you had Anthony Brown. And then in 2022, Trevon didn't have the interception totals, but I thought he was outstanding in that season. They had DaRon Bland, a rookie DaRon Bland, but they had a ton of problems with their outside corners by the end of the year, right? That's when they were bringing in Mackenzie Alexander and Xavier Rhodes, which Mike Zimmer probably would love those guys here. And then last year, we got 2 games of elite cornerback play. The first game, the Cowboys held the Giants to 0 points, right? And then the next game was the game against the Patriots. They held the Patriots to 7 points, 10 points, I believe. Right. Yeah. And then Diggs got hurt a couple weeks later. I think they played the Jets the next week, right? They held the Jets to 10 points, and then they played the Cardinals in week 4, and he got hurt kind of between that week. I'm just curious to see what this defense would look like with a all-pro healthy DaRon Bland and an all-pro healthy Trevon Diggs, because there are not many teams in the league that have that kind of star power at corner.
Yeah, I mean, I think, at one point, they had Gilmore and Bland when Bland was playing at a high level, and I think that's probably the closest we've gotten to that, right? But yeah, I mean, the dream originally was to have Bland, Gilmore, and Diggs out there. But I don't even think at that point we knew that Bland was going to be this kind of Bland, right? And it's not very Bland again to beat that joke to absolute
death.
But
a bad dad pun right there.
He's just really got to put that joke to bed at this point. No, but I think that's the thing, is that this is even a higher high than I think we anticipated from last season, right? And I think I'll even go a step further, that I'm as excited about Jordan Lewis in the slot that I was about, DaRon Bland in the slot last year, or even Stephon Gilmore on the outside last year. So I think the 3 of them and how much they're all going to play is really exciting, because I do think that they all kind of fit the roles that they're going to be assigned extremely well in these defenses. And this was one of the areas where I didn't have a ton of concerns about the transition, into Zimmer, right? I really think that this is an area where this lines up with these guys' skill sets in a way that maybe other stuff doesn't perfectly line up. But I'm excited to see Trevon Diggs in this defense and the way he operates and Bland opposite of him.
Maybe it's just the pessimistic Cowboy fan in me that the Cowboys have really never had two great corners playing together at the same time for a long time. And listen, go back to the 90s, right? When the Cowboys signed Dion in 1995, he got hurt pretty early into that season. I think it was a groin injury. And then Kevin Smith had the injury, and we never saw fully healthy Kevin Smith.
Yeah.
Go to pick a year, 2012, right? It was Morris Claiborne and Brandon Carr. Morris Claiborne couldn't stay healthy. Or over and over again, it seems like the Cowboys want to have these two stud outside corners, and they haven't been able to have them stay healthy at the same time. That's why I'm cautiously optimistic about how good this defense could be because of not only the two, but also because of Lewis in the slot.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like the talent of the guys, but then also, the fact that they're operating now in a kind of more interesting and kind of complex coverage system than they were operating before. I mean, before they're operating in sort of a cover 1, cover 3 type world with some other stuff mixed in. Now they're going to be playing more kind of complex coverage. And the fact that these two guys, specifically Bland and Diggs, are such good fits for this kind of mix in of off coverage world, I think is really, really exciting and potentially can even raise the ceiling on where these guys can go.
I just would like to see it for one full season. Just like two all-pro corners healthy in their primes at the same time would be a lot of fun. I'm getting excited about that possibility. We should also mention that I think Kalen Carson's kind of locked down that cornerback 4 job. And obviously you don't want to subject a 5th round rookie into the starting lineup or, having to play more than you thought. But Cowboys have a pretty good history with day 3 corners, whether it's Orlando Scandrick, right? Yeah. Deron Bland, who was a superstar. Seems like they found another quality player on day 3.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, it's been pretty clear from day one, he hasn't really relinquished his grip on that spot. And even when Nahshon Wright was here and taking, snaps with the starter, it was pretty clear that Carson was the guy that was ahead of him on the depth chart, So, I think Carson has basically been very impressive from the beginning of this whole process and hasn't really, again, we talk about the drum beat. The drum beat has never stopped for Kalen Carson throughout these weeks and throughout the preseason. So I'm just looking forward to continue. And if it does, he's definitely going to be cornerback 4 on this team. And his spot is basically assured at this point.
If those DBs stay healthy, this defense has a chance to be incredible. And maybe they won't have the turnovers that they've had over the last couple of years with Dan Quinn, but they might be better suited to play some of these really good offenses and actually hold some of these great offenses to 17, 20 points. And if you can do that, you're going to win a lot of football games. Landon, let's talk about the young offensive linemen who work with the first team on Wednesday. We will discuss how Tyler Guyton and Cooper Beebe performed next. This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. What are your self-care non-negotiables? Maybe you go for a walk every morning. Maybe you never skip the gym or leg day. Or maybe it's therapy. You never want to skip your therapy appointment because when your schedule is packed with kids' activities, big work projects, and more, it's really easy to let those priorities slip. But we know what makes us happy, and sometimes it's hard to make time for it. But when you feel like you have no time for yourself, those non-negotiables like therapy are more important than ever before. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's done entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for any reason at no additional charge. Never skip therapy day with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That is BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, enjoy the Locked On Fantasy Football podcast. Get daily insights to the best fantasy draft strategies so that you can win your league this season. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, Lena, let's talk about the young offensive lineman. Let's start with Tyler Guyton, who we knew was going to be starting at left tackle this week. Got a lot of reps with the ones, a lot of reps against Jared Verse, the first-round picks for the Rams. There was some good, there was some bad, but one of the things I really liked, there was a rep that he had against Verse where he kind of buried Verse and then started talking trash to him, right? Like he was getting into his face. Why I like that is because you can tell that it matters to Tyler Guyton. Right? Like you can tell that he's out here. He's competitive. He wants to win these one-on-one reps. And honestly, like that's all you can really expect from your rookie offensive tackle.
So real quick, I was going to do a quick aside here. I think, you know, it's come up in the game broadcast. They talked about how he has a different kind of demeanor on game day and that sort of thing. That second or third day of practice that I went out to at Oxnard, Tyler had an issue with his helmet. They couldn't figure out I think it was fitting him weird or something like that. And I was taken aback by how frustrated and upset and not, you know, laid back about the situation he was. He wasn't mad or being rude to anybody or anything, but how
you know, kind of
frustrated he was. That's what I'm getting at, right? Is that this matters to this kid. Like, and I think that's what we're seeing is what the Cowboys saw with this kid in the interviews and during the draft process. And I think what you're seeing out here is that this matters to this kid. He's going against Jared Verse, who he has some experience playing against in college, and he kind of, if I remember, beat him up in college a little bit as well. And getting it up. And listen, Jared definitely got his in this practice too. There's some snaps where there was one where he was able to knock Guyton down. There was another one where he was able to get inside on him. But for the most part, from what I saw, Guyton got the better part of Verse all throughout the day. And you know, was letting him know about it. And Verse was getting visibly frustrated with having to get his butt kicked in front of everybody by Guyton. So I think, you know, and again, these are not set up for offensive linemen to have great success, right? You have no help. It's a one-on-one situation. The guy has a two-way go basically. And so the fact that Guyton is having success against someone like Verse, it shows that he's in a good spot relative to his other draft mates. So, mostly very positive stuff. I mean, again, you're going to have an up and down day against a good player like that. But I thought, overall, like you said, it's not even just that he's playing well, and that is obviously a very good thing. And we're seeing all the things that we projected with him, with his feet. You know, his hands have gotten better over time. It's the things that we weren't expecting. It's the mentality, it's the toughness, it's the way he's finishing on rundowns. Like there was another one where he just collapsed the whole left side of the line on a down block and was able to kind of allow for I think it was Dowdle to get outside and get for a big gain. There was another one where he had a backside cutoff on a three technique, and he just got physical with the guy. And so seeing that stuff, like beyond what we had kind of projected for this kid, gets you really excited for what he could potentially be. And I'm not saying he's going to go out there and beat up Myles Garrett on week one and have all day. But listen, the fact that he's earned the right to go out there and play Myles Garrett on week one without any kind of, hesitation, I think that's a strong indication of where this kid is going in the future.
I just think back to where we were when the Cowboys drafted him. Like it's a right tackle with limited snaps in college, who's now making the transition to left tackle. He's been like the lead story of our podcast for like a week straight. I'm sure the listeners are getting tired of it. Probably not, though. I mean, maybe this is awesome. Like to have an offensive tackle that you're really excited about. Again, we'll see how. Go ahead.
All those guys that were coming out. I mean, that's the thing is like just to kind of what you're saying. Like all those offensive linemen that were coming out and talking. Brandon Thorne tweeted out that he what did he say, Marcus? That he was basically like, I'm not one to usually comment on practice clips, but and he did eyeball emoji and like 5 or 6 different offensive lineman and offensive lineman
Jeff Schwartz is
guru.
one of them. Yep.
Yeah, like Mitchell Schwartz, we're quoting it and saying I was out at camp or I've seen it. And it looks like they've done it again. Andre, what's his name? Whitworth from
Andrew Whitworth.
from the Rams.
Yep.
Yeah, it was out there. He quote tweeted. He was like, "Yeah, I was out there at practice, and I saw it as well." So obviously, he's getting rave reviews from like all angles at this point, which is just incredible to see.
And I think there was a report. This might have been like a week old now, but Jeremy Fowler of ESPN said that the Cowboys acknowledge that there's still a long ways to go here with Tyler Guyton, but they are giddy with what they've seen so far. Like they just couldn't be more excited. There was another play that he had in team drills where he's kind of down blocking on Braden Fisk, who is a defensive tackle that the Rams drafted in the second round. They actually traded 2 second-round picks to go get him. And just completely leveled him and moved him off the ball. I mean, like that's the kind of stuff, even more than the pass blocking stuff, that I just didn't know. Like, how is he going to do in the run game? Is he going to be able to move people in the run game? So far, so good. Now it still has to translate over to the regular season, but if you're building the case for him to be like a solid rookie left tackle, I think it would look a little bit like this.
Yeah, again, that's all. When we say stuff like this, when we're trying to tap the brakes, it's like, look, I mean, we're not trying to drive the hype train, but for the hype train to be real, it would look like this, right? It would look like this on its way to him being a great player. So,
and we had the same
the track he's on.
Again, I just want to preface, I'm not saying that he's going to have the rookie season that Tyler Smith had, but Tyler Smith had a lot of the same notes coming out of that training camp in 2022. So far, so good. We should mention Cooper Beebe started this practice, this scrimmage, whatever you want to call it, at center. I know there was some snap issues. I think it was him. Was it the other centers that were having snap issues?
It was actually Hoffman, which is hilarious that it was Hoffman who I think had at least back-to-back, if I'm not mistaken, bad snaps. So I thought Cooper Beebe for the most part, and you tell me what you think. I thought he looked pretty good.
I mean, there was no reports or anything of like him struggling. It seemed like there were a lot of people that were excited. There was a one-on-one rep that I saw where he just buried a defensive tackle, and he's one of these guys. Like once he gets a hold of you and once he gets his base set, like good luck getting out of him. I know he's got short arms and stuff, but like, man, this guy's strong.
Yeah, again, I saw another rep where he did revert back to kind of the issues that we talked about, where he kind of stops moving his feet. And then he started lunging, and then he got beat. But for the most part, outside of that, outside of one-on-one rep, the other things I saw were very good, and especially in the run game, I felt like he was moving bodies. So I mean, I think, like we said, it's BB is maybe he flopped places with Hoffman today in practice with Hoffman, kind of not being able to handle the snaps, and that sounded like, I mean, obviously all of us kind of defaulted thinking that was BB that was in there, but the fact that Hoffman is also struggling now, you're kind of in a dead heat at this point, and you've still got a couple weeks left of training camp to see how that all pans out. But obviously, BB is at least in striking distance of being a very, very strong backup on this team, if not the starter.
I'm curious to see how the offensive line plays this year, but I'm also really excited because there's youth and there's upside here. Like, I don't think Tyler Smith has reached his ceiling at left guard. I don't. I think he can be even better. You're likely going to have, you're definitely going to have a new starting center. We're hoping it's Cooper Beebe. You're going to have a new left tackle. Terrence Steele, we're hoping is healthier, should be healthier, gets back to the way he was playing in early 2022. There's certainly going to be some rough spots, but I'm hopeful that maybe by the time, Lando, that we get to like Thanksgiving, this offensive line is significantly ahead of where they are early in the season.
Well, I think that will absolutely be true if they're able to kind of maintain some level of health.
That's the big part.
Then I do think that they'll develop, and they do have so much more upside. I think you're right that the key thing is that you've got 3 to maybe 4 players who on this 5-man offensive line that you feel like could be playing better football by mid-season than they are at the beginning of the season. So that obviously pretends a lot of upside for this offensive line, and obviously going into Thanksgiving is a really great time to start getting an uptick in offensive line play.
All right, we had a lengthy injury report from Wednesday's practice. We'll dive into every single one of them and tell you what the latest is for every player next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. I love sports. I love them so much that I never want them to stop because there's nothing better than after a long day sitting on the couch and watching a game. But unfortunately, with the playoffs winding down, we just have fewer and fewer games to watch. And the sports aren't sporting the way we'd like them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime that I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to fanduel.com and start making the most out of your summer. Go check out the NFL lines. We've got preseason lines. We've got NFL futures lines. You can go bet on week one already. I think the Cowboys are slight underdogs in week one to the Browns. Go check those out. Visit fanduel.com, the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. Every dayers on Friday's show, Lane and I will break down the preseason game against the Raiders, which, by the way, heard a little birdie say that all of the Raiders' healthy starters are going to play in that game for at least a quarter. Devontae Adams is not happy about that, but he is expected to play along with Max Crosby, Christian Wilkins. That's great news for the Cowboys, by the way. Get as many reps as possible against the team playing their starters. So that's encouraging, Landon. But let's finish out here with some injury updates. We're going to go one by one and just kind of talk about the impact of this one. Earl Bostic was the biggest injury. He got hurt during a drill. It's a lower leg injury. We haven't heard the update, but left practice in a cart doesn't look good.
No, and again, not a spot that we can really afford. I mean, listen, as far as long-term health of the position, not as impactful as Chuma Doga, right? Because you hope that Earl Bostic wouldn't have to ever get on the field and play, but still, just one of those things where you only have so many of these reps during practice, and there is a point where you can overload your young tackle, and the other guys, your two young tackles now, with too many reps, right? And you don't want to get them hurt in that point. So there's a point where a good practice turns into exposure, right? Like you're exposing them to too many snaps. So they've worked out two guys, I think this morning, if I'm not mistaken, to kind of sign in order to replace Udoga just with snaps, right? Like they signed one of them.
Yep.
I kind of think they may go back to the other guy as well and say, hey, you want to come by and take some snaps as well. So I would definitely be say that they're, I mean, depending on the severity of what Bostic's dealing with, if it's, the fact that he was on the cart obviously is not great. If it's something that's going to take him through the rest of training camp, which is likely, I would say, I think that they would likely have to, sign at least one more guy outside of the guy that they already signed, just to kind of get through practice without exposing both Austin Richards and Tyler Guyton to too many snaps for facilitating the rest of practices.
A couple other little ones. Damone Clark had a knee issue. He missed practice. He had a sleeve on his knee. That one doesn't seem overly concerning. DeMarvion Overshown, though, he did have a hip injury in practice. It's being called a hip pointer. Did not return. I wouldn't be surprised if the Cowboys hold him out just through the weekend. Maybe we don't see him at the preseason game, but it doesn't seem major. Maybe he's able to practice Friday or whatever they decide to do. I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I mean, they're probably being careful with the guy that they know that is going to probably play a big role in this defense this year. So they don't want to even though they're young, they got to be careful with these guys. The young guys get hurt too. So I think that they're probably just being careful there.
A couple other ones. Shaka Toney had a groin injury that he suffered in the preseason game, and the Cowboys actually waived him injured, which means that another team can claim him and let him get healthy. And if he doesn't get claimed, he reverts back to the Cowboys IR list. He would be on the season-ending IR list. What usually happens here is the Cowboys will give him some kind of settlement, and that'll allow him to go sign somewhere else. But I keep coming back to this idea of you said this, I think it was in our last show, the Cowboys signed a couple of these veteran defensive ends like Shaka Toney to help them get through training camp with an eye on maybe somebody else for the actual season.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to deny that, in the actual role of playing a third or fourth defensive end who gets in for 7 to 12 snaps in a game as a pass rusher that, Carl Lawson isn't better than the guys you signed, or,
Yeah.
so I think that the point of what they're trying to get done is facilitating, getting through practice, and facilitating getting through these preseason games. What Carl Lawson is. The workout was to see if he's still in the shape that you imagine him to
Yep.
be, and they either confirmed or denied that. But I don't think the
He's in
point
good shape.
necessarily. Yeah, I that's what I've heard as well. And I think that
also know Carl Lawson and what kind of shape he is. What was his dad, a bodybuilder, right?
Yeah. I mean, the guy is notoriously well built, and likes to work out, from what
Maybe
I
it's just those
understand from
Auburn
him and his
guys are just
father.
well built. The Auburn alums.
They're all just the Auburn alums are really something. I think the issue is that these are two different jobs, right? Like the job of taking practice of training camp practices, which the AQMs and the Takas of the world can do, right? The Shakas of the world can do. Whereas Carl Lawson, he's a veteran. He probably doesn't want to come to camp and do a bunch of snaps. And again, you're likely to expose what is a very expensive veteran to injury by doing so. So I again, this even further makes me think that they'll probably sign someone, a legitimate, more higher tier defensive end as we get closer and closer to the regular season.
Two more quick injury updates before we head out. Deuce Vaughn returned to practice, was at least limited in this practice. It does seem like he's trending towards playing on Saturday, which he needs to play. Like if he's going to make this roster, he needs to play. And the other really good news is Izzy Makamu, who was dealing with a groin injury. We heard from Mike McCarthy that they expected it to be a multi-week injury, already back at practice.
And he looked good too. I saw him on a couple different snaps. It does appear that he is playing almost exclusively nickel now, which I think is exciting. I think it's a great fit for his skill set. I'm really excited. Hopefully he does play on Saturday. I'm really excited to see him get an opportunity, because he's a guy that I just think that has the kind of versatility, and especially on special teams as well. Like, it's just like such a valuable back end of your roster piece.
Yes. All right, that is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen today. Now go listen to the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. Get daily insights to the best fantasy draft strategies so that you can win your league this season. You can find the link to the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast in the description of this show, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Go check out the Locked On Cowboys podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. You can follow the show on YouTube as well. Follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus _Mosier, and we will see you right back here tomorrow.